Hi guys, we're here for another reading of In the Middle of Hickory Lane. Let's begin. I think we left off on chapter 17. Okay. January 6, 1965. I was doing my best to properly overwinter my beehives, but all the bees have died. It feels like a piece of me died too. I should have done more to protect them. Cora B. The police presence lured me away from my desk and out onto the front porch. A police car, an unmarked sedan, and a search and rescue cargo van had pulled up to the curb, not too far from where the gazing pool stood. I recognized Bob Graham, the detective in charge of Bee's case, straight off, and wondered why he had returned when he told us the police were done in the garden. In addition to Bob, 3 men and a woman conferred at the curb before pulling a piece of equipment from the back of the cargo van that looked like a cross between a lawnmower and a hand truck. Gloria and Dorothy were quick to join them in the garden, full of energy as they gestured this way and that. When I had checked in with the pair earlier, after Chase had texted me about Glory calling in sick to the marketplace, it had seemed to me that Glory had made a miraculous recovery. She hadn't appeared the least bit under the weather. Even Dorothy, who'd been in the hospital the night before, seemed full of life as they played gin rummy and ate omelets. I had the suspicion Glory had been planning this day off for a while as part of her grand plan. She wanted to get a feel for how Emmy could handle the sweet place on her own. The sneaky, sneaky woman. As I watched the goings-on across the street, I was so intent on rubbernecking that I didn't hear Jamie and Mabel until he tapped on the screen door. "Come on in," I said, unable to stop the small flutter in my chest at seeing him. Mabel rushed over to me and I leaned over to give her some love. She licked my face and gave me her paw. I laughed. "Did you learn a new trick this week? Good girl." Her tail thumped. "What's going on there?" he asked with a jut of his chin toward the garden as he sat in the rocker next to mine. "I don't know. They showed up about 15 minutes ago. I'm sure Aunt Glory will fill us in when she's done talking to them." I glanced over at him, felt that stupid flutter intensify. "Where's Alice?" "Her mom took her home with her after the soccer game. She'll be there until Monday morning." The flutters died, drifting slowly into the dark, gaping pit in my stomach. I hadn't realized she wouldn't be here this weekend. Oh well, that's good. I'm sure she's missed her. "She has," Jamie said. "Living between two houses isn't ever easy, but she shoulders it well enough since it's all she's ever known." It probably helps that you and her mom have a good relationship and are willing to do what's best for Alice. Not every kid is so lucky. I glanced at my hands, remembering how Wiley's small fingers used to curl around mine, and how he'd laugh open-mouthed, showing off the gaps where his baby teeth had fallen out. When Lucas and I divorced, I tried to get visitation rights to see Wiley. They were impossible by law, but Lucas could have allowed it. Instead, he was intent to cut me clean out of his life, as if I'd never existed at all. He told me that it would only confuse Wiley if I was still around. There was no changing his mind, no amount of begging or offering to forfeit my divorce settlement, of throwing myself at his mercy. I'd have done anything because I'd wanted desperately to keep Wiley in my life, wanted it more than life itself. When I lost him, I'd wanted to die. I tried to die on a wet road on a dark day, but fate and glory had kept me alive. I pushed the memories away, irritated at how often they popped up unbidden. Would they ever stop hurting? "It's not always easy," he said, watching me closely, "but I know it's worth the hard times. Alice is why I'm here, actually. I know I'm a poor substitute, but she made me promise to water the flowers, and I was hoping to take you to lunch." The flutters rose from the dead. "If you're not busy," he added when I didn't answer right away, I know you work on weekends." I ran my fingers over Mabel's head and through her soft curls. "I do, that's true, but I've wrapped up all the work I had planned for today, because I thought I'd be spending the afternoon with Alice. I have a big project I'm working on, a contest, but I'm kind of in limbo with it." "The Brickyard contest? Why the limbo?" I turned slightly to face him head on. "How do you know about the contest? Did you read about it somewhere?" I know I hadn't told him. I barely told anyone, just Emmy, my mother, and Aunt Glory. Glory, the oversharer. Did Glory say something? Confusion swept over his face, darkening his pale eyes, drawing his eyebrows down low. "No, she hasn't said a word about it. I know because the shopping center is my project." He tipped his head as if truly puzzled. I opened my mouth, closed it again. You're managing the Yardley job? How hard had I known his temporary work in town was connected to the Yardley brickyard? It seemed a major detail to miss, though I had turned out his particulars when he first arrived in town, once I learned he was a single dad. Could be the whole neighborhood had been talking about it, but I turned it all out. He half smiled, yet there was still a puzzled air about him. You don't know, do you? Know what? I said more sharply than I intended. Or maybe I intended it. I wasn't sure. I was annoyed, feeling like I was missing something obvious. I'm Jamie Yardley. It's my land that's being built on, Cora B. I inherited it from my father when he passed away a few years ago. I know about the contest because I'm the one who came up with the idea. I'm lousy with concepts, truly terrible. I'm more of a spreadsheet kind of guy. No. It was the only word that went through my head. It circled, growing bigger, louder. No, no, no. You really didn't know? He asked. It's not a secret. No, I said, voicing my thoughts aloud. Mabel licked my hand. I didn't know. This is terrible. He laughed, then sobered as he realized I wasn't kidding. Why? It's just that I can't be in the contest if you and me, my cheeks felt blazing hot and I couldn't bring myself to say anything more for fear that I'd self-combust from pure embarrassment. The contest committee knows we're acquainted, Cora B., that we're neighbors, friends. I've been assured it's not a problem. I'm not a judge, so there's no conflict of interest. It's a small town. People know each other. I also know the other two designers. Work with them a couple of times on different jobs. The judges are from out of state and completely impartial. If you drop out now, the only one you'll be hurting is yourself. You're talented. Let that talent speak for itself. Bits of juniper green continued to float around him, indicating there was still something he wasn't telling me, a secret he was keeping to himself. I didn't know whether it revolved around something to do with his private life or his work life, but where I can't ever say that word. Whereas it hadn't bothered me too much before, it did now. I don't know, I said. It's not sitting right. The whole contest has never sat quite right. I thought maybe that was why I was struggling, but now, knowing who you are, he held up a hand. Let's put me aside for a moment. As if that's possible. He cracked a smile. Let's try to put me aside for a moment. Why are you struggling? I debated how to explain it before saying, I'm more comfortable with color consulting. And though that's an aspect of my contest, it's not everything. And with my color work, I've only designed for structures that already exist. I can't get a good feel for the Yardley complex's personality from a mock-up. I know that probably doesn't make sense to you, but it does in my head. I'm hoping that seeing the land will help. If it doesn't, maybe the Historical Society has photos of what was there before it was raised, and I can find inspiration there. I have pictures, he said, plenty of them. Before I could beg to see them, I noticed Gloria and Dorothy heading up the walkway. Mabel was on her feet, her tail wagging as they climbed the steps. Jamie leaped up to open the door. As they came onto the porch, Dorothy kept looking over her shoulder at the police, and bright color sat high in Glory's cheeks. As they sat down on the porch swing, I said, What's Jamie's last name, Aunt Glory? She tipped her head and gave me a strange look, as though wondering if I'd lost my mind. Is this one of those mental acuity tests? Because I can pass this one, easy as can be, hun. He's a Yardley. Why hadn't she said anything about him when I brought up working on the Yardley contest? It seemed an odd thing not to mention, unless I narrowed my gaze at her. She looked me dead in the eye and grinned. A dang handsome one, too, don't you think? Apparently, Alice wasn't the only one around here hoping to be a matchmaker. Before I could say anything, Dorothy bounced in her seat and said, Can I play too? My brain isn't as sharp as it used to be, so it can use all the testing it can get. Dorothy liked a good competition. Sure can, Glory said. What's Jamie's granddaddy's name? The one that Levi stole from? Joseph, Dorothy said, beaming. His wife, that's who Levi was catting around with, was named Margot, with a fancy T at the end. Jamie here has his granddaddy's smile, cut from a fine cloth, he was. A fine, fine cloth. Well done, Glory said, putting her arm around her. Your brain seems to be working just fine to me. I stared wide-eyed at Dorothy, who was puffed up with pride. Because of Bee's diary, I'd known she'd suspected Levi had been cheating, but I hadn't known it had been with Mrs. Yardley. If I was this shocked by the news, I could only imagine how Bea had felt at the time. I told you my name wasn't a secret, Jamie said softly to me. He was a Yardley. I couldn't wrap my head fully around it. At the sound of voices, Glory looked across the street. I don't know if I can abide watching the police tromping through the garden all day. I might lose my head. They were supposed to be done. Jamie said, Corby and I were thinking about going out for lunch. Why don't you and Dorothy come with us? We can take our time and hopefully the police will be done before we get back. I opened my mouth to argue, but then snapped it closed again. If getting out of the neighborhood would help Aunt Glory in any way, I was all for it. Happy to, Dorothy said. I worked up a powerful appetite whooping Gloria at cards this morning. With a roll of her eyes, Glory wiggled off the swing. Her memory might be just fine, but her arithmetic skills are questionable. Lunch is a good idea. Give us a minute to get freshened up, then we'll be ready to go. Why are the police even here? I asked. Otherwise, my curiosity might just kill me. Glory huffed and shook her head. I'll fill you in the car. We were an unlikely foursome, fivesome really, if one counted Mabel, and she wasn't the type to be overlooked. He's being tight-lipped, Glory said from the back seat of Jamie's truck. He being Bob the detective. Jamie's truck was surprisingly spacious and fit us all, and my crutches with room to spare. Mabel sat in between Dorothy and Glory, her nose sticking out of the small sliding rear window, her tail slashing against the console. It was the same spot she'd taken last night when we gone to the drive-in. It was like the space had been designed just for her. Tight-lipped and squirrely, Dorothy added, sounding like she was wanting to cuss him out the same way she'd done with the squirrel who dug in her vegetable garden. He wouldn't tell us much, Glory rubbed Mabel's neck, then let out a laugh when Mabel licked her chin. But he was using some sort of fancy radar or sonar or something, ground penetrating, he told me, so he's obviously looking for something underground. The radar must have been the lawnmower-looking machine I'd seen. What else is there to find? More bones is my guess, Dorothy said over a yawn. I winced at the words. It was an upsetting, unsettling thought. As I thought of Bea, my eyes filled with tears, and I looked out the window. I had believed this investigation was all but over. Now this. When would it end? Glory said, Bob said he'd let us know more when he could. Squirrely, Dorothy repeated. I wiped the tears from my eyes and noticed the landscape. How unfamiliar it was. Clearly, I hadn't been paying attention to where we were going. Where are we? I'm taking the scenic route to lunch, Jamie said. There's something I want to show you. I haven't been out this way in forever, Glory whispered. Feels like a different world, even though it's only 5 minutes from home. Dorothy, I noticed, had nodded off. Her head was tilted back, her face suddenly looking peaceful instead of troubled. Glory caught me watching, had herself quite the night. Is she feeling better? She was never feeling badly. Glory's hair blew across her face, and she tucked what she could behind her ears. She faked fainting. An actress she isn't, but she sure made her bed, because the staff insisted she go to the hospital. She faked it? Why? She figured out why they were there and couldn't think of a faster way to go home. She confessed the whole thing this morning. Chase is going to have his hands full with her. Glory tried to cover the wistfulness in her voice with humor, but I caught it anyway. She knew her days of helping to manage Dorothy's care were coming to an end. We drove along a 2-lane country road lined by the Sweetgrass River on one side and woods on the other. Soon enough, Jamie put his blinker on and turned into a gravel lot marked up with survey sticks. Glory said, Sure has changed since the last time I saw it. Didn't realize all the buildings were gone. Those kilns were something else. Sure were, Jamie said as he put the truck in park. Is this where the old brick company used to be, I asked, staring out at the flat, naked expanse. The lot must have been graded quite recently because there wasn't so much as a weed growing on the property as far as my eye could see. Glory chuckled. I don't suppose you're willing to scrap your fancy retail plans and sell this land to me on the cheap. It'd be perfect for the marketplace. That Riverview is something I'd never tire of. He smiled at her. My investors might have a collective stroke. She winked and said, It was worth the shot. Jamie looked at me. Do you want to get out? I sat up straighter in my seat. Just for a minute. Dorothy worked up an appetite, remember? He left the truck running with the air on while he helped me with my crutches. He stood at my elbow as I carefully crouched forward on shifting gravel. I took a deep breath and tried to imagine the glass and steel shopping center here. Hold on. I think it's, yeah, okay. Barely. But it was like Emmy had said the other day, the building was too cold for this land. It needed warmth. It needed nature. Are you married to your building plan? The architecture, the glass, the steel? I wouldn't say married, maybe engaged. A breakup would be ugly and costly. Why? I shook my head, not wanting to get into it with him. I probably shouldn't be talking to him about it at all. It wasn't fair to the other designers. You're still not thinking about dropping out of the competition, are you? He asked. Sleep on it, at least. It was hard to argue when he was so insistent. A little time couldn't hurt any. Since it seems so important to you, I'll sleep on it, I eyed him. But why do you care so much if I drop out or not? He stuck his hands in his pockets. I just think you deserve the chance to showcase your talents. I watched him closely, wanting to believe him, but I couldn't. Because as he stood there talking about my talents, the juniper green that floated around him intensified in color. Whatever guilty secret he was keeping apparently involved me. Chapter 18. Glory's Garden Lesson Number 9. Cone flowers are always a crowd pleaser at the sweet place, and no wonder with their happy demeanor and their purple petals that look almost pink in certain light. The coneflower's proper name is echinacea, and extracts of it are used in cold medicines, which is probably why it symbolizes strength and healing. Oh, get this, because of the prickly nature of the flower's stem, the plant was named after hedgehogs. That's right, hun. Echinacea derives from the Greek word for hedgehogs. Oh, I sure do wish we had hedgehogs running around the garden to go along with all the healing that's going on around here. Wouldn't that be something to see? Emmy. The rain had rushed through the night before, leaving Hickory Lane glistening on Sunday morning as sunlight bounced off shallow puddles. I stood in Cora B's garage, ready to make a grand reveal and a sales pitch to Jamie. He'd been heading up the front walkway with a manila envelope in hand when I'd called out to him. You claim first dibs, so I pulled the sheet off with the bookcase. Otherwise, it's going to the marketplace with me tomorrow. I had decided to sell the bookcase since I needed the cash. I didn't know how much time I had left in Sweetgrass, so the bigger nest egg I could gather, the better. Jamie's jaw dropped. My God, Emmy, it's amazing. You're serious about selling? You don't want to keep it? I wanted to keep it, I truly did, but hauling a bookcase around would not be considered traveling light. I'm serious. I need to get Alice on the line, make sure she likes it. He held up a finger, tucked his manila envelope under his arm, and ran his fingers over his cell phone screen. He then held the phone up to eye level, and I saw that we were both pictured on his screen while the phone made a strange ringing noise that indicated a video call. A moment later, Alice's face filled the screen instead. She smiled when she saw me. Hey, Emmy! I'm chopped liver since she became friends with you and Cora B, Jamie said to me. Hi, Dad, she said loudly with a hint of exasperation. Al, Emmy finished the bookcase she's been working on, he said, flipping the screen to show the bookcase. Do you want it for your bedroom? Is that the same wallpaper that Glory has in her kitchen? Alice asked, her voice lifting with excitement. I love that wallpaper. It is. She had an extra roll that she graciously gave to me. I made sure to get as many shimmery bees onto the backing of the bookcase as I possibly could. I definitely want it, Alice said. I can't wait to fill it up with all my books. I'm halfway done with Les Mis, Emmy. So good. I need to get a copy of my own, one that's not all beat up like this one. It's dog-eared, she said, her voice full of disgust. Who does that to a library book? Barbarians. We've been brought up in two different worlds, but there was something about Alice that reminded me of myself, the good parts of me. Ignoramuses, she said. Monsters. Jamie flipped the screen back. All right, you two, don't be so hard on the poor dog eaters. Eaters. Not eaters. I looked at him in horror. Don't tell me, he hung his head. I promise to stop. He's been saying that for years, Emmy. Years. Okay, time to say goodbye, Jamie said with a light laugh. We said our goodbyes to Alice and he crossed his arms over his chest. Looks like we have a deal for the bookcase, Emmy. How much are you asking for it? I took a step back, sized up the bookcase. I hadn't thought this far ahead. I mentally calculated the cost of supplies, plus there was my time to consider. But the number I came up with seemed much too high. I certainly wouldn't pay that much, so now I was mentally subtracting. Don't undervalue it, he said as if reading my mind. No friends and family discount. I'm happy to pay full price. It's worth it. You're a lousy negotiator. How do you own a company? I'd be stunned when Cora B had told me Jamie was a Yardley. She wasn't the only one who hadn't a clue. He laughed, the old-fashioned way I inherited it. Now who's undervaluing? Over pints of ice cream last night, Cora B and I had fired up her laptop and searched online for everything we could find about James Yardley. It was true he had inherited what was left of the Yardley Brick Company, but a few years out of college, Clemson, he had started and grown the Yardley Group, a multifaceted industrial, commercial, and residential development and construction company. All right, you want tough? He put his hands on his hips, narrowed his eyes. I refuse to pay more than $300. Take it or leave it. I almost fell over. $300? That's too much, Jamie. You're just being nice. He held up a finger again as he pulled out his phone. I thought he was going to get Alice back on the screen, but after a moment, he held the phone out to me. My niceness only goes so far. Know your market, Emmy. I studied the screen, which was full of listings for hand-painted bookcases. Most weren't nearly as nice as mine and were priced between $400 and $500. He said, I wasn't lying when I told you I'd been looking for unique pieces for Alice's room. There's a big old market out there for what you do. What you do. As the word sank in deep, a sense of purpose came over me. Could I make a living doing this? Others did. If this website was any indication, why couldn't I? Okay, so maybe not straight away, but I could work toward it. After all, look where Gloria had started with her marketplace. With a burst of resolve, I thrust my hand and said, $350 and we have a deal. My God, you're a fast learner. His big hand enfolded mine in a firm handshake. I'm guessing you only take cash or check? Cash is preferable. I'll get it to you by the end of the day. Smiling, I nodded. That's just fine, but you can take the bookcase now if you want. My sadness at parting with the bookcase had ebbed with knowing it was going to a good home. The best home. I'll do that. He held out the manila envelope. Could you give this to Cora B for me? She's inside. You don't want to give it to her yourself? He glanced toward the house, looking like he very much wanted to see her. I don't want to seem like I'm pressuring her. They're the photos of the old brickyard. I took the envelope. I'll see that she gets them. Last I'd heard, she still hadn't decided whether to continue on with the contest. She'd asked my advice, but I hadn't much to give. This kind of thing was out of my league. I'd simply told her to trust her instincts. Mine had rarely led me astray. Thanks, Emmy. He hefted the bookcase the same way he had the night it had been rescued from the curb. With his long strides, he was down the driveway and halfway home before I knew it. But I swore I could still see those bees twinkling in his wake, as if proud of me for seeing beauty where others couldn't. I started grinning and didn't stop for a good long while. By mid-afternoon, I cleaned Cora B's house, read a few chapters of a book, took a walk around the neighborhood to examine the trash at the curb ahead of tomorrow's pickup, but didn't find any furniture in the mix, and checked on my flower bed, smiling at the growth in so little time. I sat by the gazing pool for a while, where I'd seen nothing in the water but bubbles. I'd been putting off asking Gloria and Cora B about the gazing pool for one reason or another, but I was determined to bring it up today when we were all together, prepping Sunday supper. But as soon as I walked into Glory's kitchen, she had put me straight to work. Now I stood at the island, my hands slick with butter. This seems inappropriate. Glory laughed. Don't be shy. Get on in there. Shove it on in. You got enough butter? I glanced at Cora B for help, but she was smiling ear to ear as she watched, too entertained to intervene. Maybe too much, I said. Glory shook her head. No such thing, hon. We want lots of it, so it'll slowly melt into meat as it cooks. So good. As if removing the giblets hadn't been bad enough. Now my hands were in between the skin of a raw roasting chicken in its breast. I tried to flick butter off my fingertips the best I could, the way Glory had shown me. I might have to become a vegetarian. Not today, you don't, Glory said. Not after all this work. Once you're done with that, wash your hands up good, and we'll add the seasonings. She crossed to the pantry and pulled open the door. A little salt and pepper, some fresh rosemary, and thyme. Cora B., who was sitting in front of the sink with the basket of potatoes, turned the water on for me when I walked over and then squirted some soap into my hands. "How do I get potato duty?" I asked. She smiled sweetly. You'll have to fight me for it." I wrinkled my nose and washed up. I could take Cora B. in a fight pretty easily, but I couldn't imagine scrapping with her. Fighting her would be like fighting a puppy. "I think I'm more of a baker than a cook. Maybe I can take over dessert from now on." Glory laughed. "The baking is yours for the taking, Emmy, honey. I bake so much during the week I wouldn't mind passing the torch. I wouldn't mind it at all." Now, she told me, after I'd already abused the poor chicken. Glory looked around the kitchen. "Where on earth do I put the salt and pepper?" I glanced at the knife block. The pair of ceramic chickens were sitting in front of it as usual. "I found them," I said as I dried my hands. I picked them up and handed them over to Glory. I was growing used to overlooking her slip-ups, acting as though they never happened. "I swear they move around on their own." She set them on the island and started pulling leaves off a sprig of rosemary. I shared a meaningful look with Cora B. before returning to Glory's side. As the rhythmic clicks of the potato peeler filled the air, I thought about how to broach the subject of the gazing pool. Straight out with it was probably best, but I didn't quite know how to form the words. So we went on with our roast chicken lesson, and not long after, the chicken was in the oven, which I'd made sure was preheated. Opportunity to talk about the gazing pool finally came when Gloria pulled dirty carrots from her harvest basket. "Puny little things, but they'll do just fine for supper," she faced me, which I noticed she did whenever she really wanted me to pay attention to what she was doing. "Carrots aren't one of my finer crops, but they're one of my favorite vegetables, so they're worth the effort. We're going to glaze these babies with some butter and honey, and woo! Just wait till you try them. Go on and grab the honey from the pantry while I wash these up and have Cora B. peel them for us." I opened the pantry door, found the honey, which I noticed had come from a local farm that had a booth at the marketplace. Glory left the carrots with Cora B. and filled a large pot with water and put it on the stovetop. It took 2 tries for her to turn on the correct burner. Then she headed to the fridge. I still held the honey as said as casually as possible. "This honey is beautiful. Did Bee ever keep bees?" The peeler stilled. Glory's hand froze on the refrigerator handle as she turned to face me. "Why do you ask?" I almost chickened out and made a quip about how it seemed like something someone named B would do, but I took a shallow breath and said, "I saw something in the gazing pool that made me think that maybe she did." Glory threw her hands in the air with excitement. "You saw something in the gazing pool? Did you hear that, Cora B?" Cora B smiled. "I sure did." Glory wobbled over to me and gave me a big hug, squashing me and the honey against her chest. "The gazing pool doesn't show the past to just anyone. It has to be someone special, someone worthy." "It doesn't show the past to just anyone." Gloria pulled away, but gave my forehead a noisy kiss. B did keep bees, according to her journal, which was saved only because they had been in her purse in the car when the farmhouse burned down. She also wrote that the bees didn't survive. Cora B added as she passed a plate of peeled carrots to Glory, something about overwintering. Overwintering? Hardly. The weather had nothing to do with the bees' fate. I could clearly see the man push the boxes to the ground. The man I assumed was Levi. "What did you see in the gazing pool?" Gloria asked, her eyes full of curiosity. "I saw 2 bee boxes not too far from the gazing pool. The land looked a lot different then. I wouldn't tell her how the bees had been killed. It would serve no purpose. How does the gazing pool..." Gloria held up a hand. "We stopped asking why and how a long time ago. The first time I saw something, I took myself off to the doctor, afraid I was having hallucinations. Everyone knows the South is full of magic, so why shouldn't we have a little of it in our lives?" "I will say," Cora B piped in, "that it seems like it doesn't show you something unless it thinks you need to see it for whatever reason." "True, true," Glory said. "I couldn't imagine why I needed to see Levi being a terrible person. His reputation had been well known by the time I arrived in Sweetgrass." "Unless it hadn't been Levi?" I asked. "Do you have any old pictures of Bee or Levi?" Oh, hon, I had plenty of Lillian and Rowan growing up, but none of Bee's photos survived the fire, and I lost the only album I had in the move from Georgia. It's possible Dorothy might have a couple from parties around town and whatnot. Cora B. perked up. Really? I'd love to see if she has one of a B. I can get it framed for Mama for Mother's Day. What a sweet idea, hon. I'll ask Dorothy. Gloria handed me a knife. Okay, Emmy, honey, we're going to slice up these carrots and steam them till they're soft. Then oh, someone's come early. Her attention had been drawn away by footsteps on the porch, and before Gloria could even wipe her hands on a dishcloth, the door swung open. Surprise! A woman shouted as she rushed inside, arms open wide. Who's missed me? Gloria squealed with happiness as Cora B. reached for her crutches and exclaimed, Mama! While they hugged, I was busy hoping no one had noticed the way I'd held the knife when the door had been flung open, ready to protect myself and those I come to love. Some old habits are hard to break. So our mom's there. So we have left off on chapter 19. Wow. So, I mean, we're getting down to the end. There's just so much in my head going on about this book. I don't even quite know which way to run with it until like more happens, and then you kind of cancel out the last thing and you kind of get more it's weird with reading. I think reading 2 chapters every time is like perfect. So if it's a little over, a little under 30 minutes, so be it. For some reason, my phone is recording in snippets only, probably because my memory is full, and I'm trying to get a new phone soon. I have a little more to pay off on it, and then, because basically you're running to own your phone. So yeah, I'm excited about it, guys. I really am. So let me know down below what you're thinking. I see a lot of people have continued to watch, which makes me really happy. I think we need to chat more in the comments. I don't see anybody chatting anymore. But I love the book, and I'm excited to read more. And how do you guys like the background? I thought for daytime it was really cute. I told you guys I would do a lot of backgrounds because they're exciting to me. But that's it for today, guys. I will see you tomorrow for more. Bye.